Hello, esteemed gentlemen. The world doesn't fear the loud, it fears the quiet it cannot read. History has shown us that the most underestimated people aren't the ones shouting from podiums, but the ones sitting silently in the corner, taking mental notes while everyone else scrambles for attention. Studies even suggest that introverted, independent personalities are more likely to be misjudged as antisocial or threatening, simply because they don't play by society's script. And that's exactly where Sigma males get trapped in an unfair paradox. Their silence, their independence, and their refusal to chase approval often become the very reasons life throws extra obstacles at them. It's almost ironic. Being competent makes them targets. Being private makes them suspicious, and being self-reliant means nobody thinks they need help. Imagine being punished, not for what you do, but for what you refuse to do. Gossip, beg for validation, or put on a fake smile at Friday's office karaoke. That's the Sigma curse. So buckle up, because what you're about to hear isn't the sugar-coated lone wolf cliché. This is the brutally honest truth about why life is unfairly harder for Sigma males, and why that very struggle makes them impossible to break. Number 1. They don't get credit for sacrifices. They don't get credit for sacrifices. This is one of the most quietly brutal realities Sigma males live with. In a world where recognition often goes to the loudest voice in the room, the Sigma's contributions vanish into thin air. He fixes problems before anyone notices, yet the applause goes to the person who announces the solution later. He steps up when others fail. But once the dust settles, everyone forgets he was the one holding things together. It's almost as if his reliability erases him. People tend to underestimate those who don't demand validation. The Sigma male rarely explains how much he's given up, how much effort he's poured in, or how many times he carried others without saying a word. Instead, he lets his actions speak. But actions, when done quietly, don't echo the way grand speeches do. Society celebrates performance, not substance. And that leaves the Sigma invisible in his own victories. The unfair twist is that his absence is always noticed. When he withdraws, suddenly everything feels off balance. The same people who ignored his sacrifices start asking why he isn't as involved anymore, or why he seems distant. They only measure his worth by what they're missing, never by what he gave. It's like he's expected to be an endless source of stability, without ever being acknowledged as the one keeping things upright. This constant underappreciation eats at him in ways others can't see. He isn't chasing credit, but that doesn't mean the lack of recognition doesn't sting. Over time, it creates a strange loneliness, the kind where you're surrounded by people who benefit from you but never truly see you. It's not hatred he faces, but a quieter form of neglect. And neglect in many ways is harder to carry because it convinces you your sacrifices were invisible to the world. For Sigma males, life becomes a cycle of giving without applause, holding without thanks, and stepping up without acknowledgement. The irony is that this very invisibility makes them indispensable because everyone unconsciously relies on what they offer. They may not get the credit, but without them, the cracks would show immediately. And maybe, just maybe, that's the heaviest burden of all. Number 2. They're miscast as broken. They're miscast as broken because society has a narrow script for what a normal life should look like. Be social, be outgoing, always surround yourself with people, and measure your worth by how much approval you can collect. The Sigma male doesn't play along with that script. He chooses solitude, not as an escape, but as a deliberate way of life. Yet, instead of being respected for that choice, he's treated like there must be something wrong with him. Like his independence is just a mask for loneliness, trauma, or emotional dysfunction. The irony is that solitude for a Sigma male is not emptiness, it's clarity. It's the space where he can think without distraction, work without noise, and grow without the pressure of constant comparison. But to those who can't stand a moment alone with themselves, his comfort in solitude feels unnatural. They project their own fears onto him, branding him antisocial or emotionally stunted because they can't understand how someone can thrive outside the herd. This miscasting isn't harmless either. It shapes the way people treat him. Friends push him to open up. Family members assume he's withdrawn because of hidden issues, and coworkers misinterpret his calm distance as arrogance or coldness. It becomes a constant cycle where his preference for solitude is treated as a flaw to be fixed rather than a strength to be respected. What makes this even more unfair is that extroverted excess is rarely questioned. The person who can't spend a single evening without company is never called broken, yet the Sigma male who enjoys his own company is. Society normalizes dependency but stigmatizes independence, and the Sigma ends up carrying the weight of being misunderstood. Over time, this repeated mislabeling creates quiet battles. He knows he isn't broken, but he's constantly forced to explain himself, defend his lifestyle, or tolerate people trying to fix him. And the truth is, he doesn't want fixing. He wants the freedom to live without being defined by other people's insecurities. The tragedy here isn't that Sigma males are broken. It's that society is too limited to see that solitude can be power, not pathology. Number 3. Their self-reliance costs them help. Their self-reliance costs them help in ways that cut deeper than most people realize. Because Sigma males have built a reputation for handling things on their own, the world gradually stops offering them a hand. People look at their independence and assume it's endless, like a well that never runs dry. They fix their own problems, make their own moves, and rarely complain. So naturally, others begin to believe they don't need support. The problem is, when they finally do, no one's around to step in. It's not that they never struggle. They do, often silently. But since they've set the standard of being the capable one, their struggles go unnoticed. If they reach out, it feels out of character, almost unbelievable to those around them. Instead of being met with immediate help, they're met with surprise, hesitation, or even disbelief. Wait, you actually need something? By then, it's often too late. They're already knee-deep in a problem, forced to carry it alone because everyone assumes they'll figure it out anyway. This creates a strange, isolating paradox. The Sigma male is strong because he's self-reliant, but that very strength makes him invisible when he's weak. He doesn't want to beg, he doesn't want to explain, and he doesn't want to justify why he suddenly can't carry everything. Yet, without asking, nobody offers. The independence that protects him also betrays him. Over time, this constant lack of support teaches him to stop expecting it altogether. He learns that even in moments of real need, he's essentially on his own. It breeds resilience, yes, but also a kind of quiet exhaustion that never fully leaves. What others don't see is that sometimes the strongest people aren't looking for rescue. They're just looking for someone who notices before they have to ask. The cruel truth is that Sigma males aren't denied help because they're disliked. They're denied help because they've been too good at surviving alone. And in a world where weakness is often loud and visible, their quiet struggles get overlooked every single time. Number 4. Competence becomes a punishment. Competence becomes a punishment for Sigma males because the very thing that should set them free, being good at what they do, ends up chaining them to endless responsibility. The moment they prove they can solve problems faster, cleaner, or smarter than others, people stop seeing their ability as a gift and start treating it as a bottomless resource to exploit. Instead of being rewarded, they're quietly loaded with more. Each success silently raises the bar, and each solved problem becomes an invitation for someone else to dump another task on their shoulders. What makes it sting is the lack of balance. When an average person struggles, people rush in with help or sympathy. When a Sigma excels, people give him more to carry. There's no recognition of effort, no pause to celebrate, just a silent assumption. He's capable, so he can handle it. Over time, that competence turns into a trap. It doesn't matter if he's exhausted, overwhelmed, or burned out. People don't even consider the possibility because competence makes him look unbreakable. This dynamic happens everywhere. At work, in families, even in friendships. At the office, he becomes the one fixing everyone else's mistakes, yet rarely the one being praised for keeping things from collapsing. At home, he's the reliable one, the one people lean on without even asking if he has space for himself. In friendships, he's the problem solver, not the one allowed to have problems. His identity gets reduced to a utility, useful, reliable, endlessly capable. The cruel part is that this cycle slowly drains him. What others see as strength feels like suffocation to him. He isn't buried by failure, he's buried by his own success. The better he gets at carrying weight, the less anyone notices the weight at all. And the more he quietly shoulders, the less people think to thank him. For Sigma males, competence doesn't bring freedom or respect, it brings expectation. And in that expectation lies the punishment. The world assumes they'll always deliver, so it never considers what it's costing them to keep doing so. In the end, their strength is both their crown and their curse. Number 5. They're forced into the role of the scapegoat. They're forced into the role of the scapegoat because in every group dynamic, someone has to carry the blame, and the Sigma male's silence makes him the easiest candidate. While others argue, justify, or loudly defend themselves, he doesn't bother. He doesn't play the blame game, doesn't scramble to protect his image, and doesn't waste energy trying to convince people of his innocence. That quiet restraint, however, is twisted into suspicion. If he's not defending himself, he must be hiding something. If he's not talking, he must be guilty. His mystery becomes the perfect blank canvas for everyone else's accusations. When chaos erupts in workplaces, friendships, or families, groups instinctively look for an outsider to absorb the fallout. The Sigma male, by nature detached from group politics, stands apart. That very distance makes him other, and in human psychology, the other is always the easiest sacrifice. He becomes the lightning rod, not because of what he did, but because of what he didn't do, fit neatly into the herd. This scapegoating isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle, like whispered suspicions in the office that he's not a team player when projects fail. Sometimes it's more vicious, where people unite against him simply because it's convenient. The group finds relief in assigning blame, and the Sigma's refusal to fight back seals the verdict. His silence, meant as strength, is rebranded as guilt. The tragedy here is that he often absorbs this injustice without protest. Arguing feels beneath him, so he lets people believe what they want. But over time, this cycle leaves scars. Being unfairly targeted again and again convinces him that no matter how competent or careful he is, society will always twist his independence into fault. What makes this especially cruel is the hypocrisy of it. The loud, reckless, and incompetent often escape responsibility because they know how to spin stories and play politics. The Sigma male, who simply minds his own business, becomes the designated villain. Not because of evidence, but because mystery makes people uneasy, and uneasy people always need someone to blame. Number 6. They're misunderstood as emotionless. They're misunderstood as emotionless because Sigma males don't perform their feelings the way the world expects. Most people are used to emotions being loud, tears, rants, exaggerated gestures, constant updates about how someone feels. The Sigma male doesn't operate that way. His emotions run deep, but they live quietly, without theatrics or fanfare. He processes them inwardly, in silence, and rarely puts them on display. To outsiders, that restraint looks like absence. They mistake still waters for empty waters. The consequence is brutal. People assume he doesn't need empathy, comfort, or care. When support is being handed out, he's skipped over because his face doesn't look sad enough, his voice doesn't sound desperate, and his demeanor doesn't scream for attention. The loudest sufferers get comforted first, while the Sigma's quiet pain goes unnoticed. He isn't heartless. He's simply not interested in turning vulnerability into a stage performance. This misreading also warps relationships. Friends might think he's detached, partners may accuse him of being cold, and co-workers might label him robotic. The truth is he feels just as deeply, sometimes even more than those around him. But because his emotions are not constantly broadcast, people assume they don't exist at all. His way of feeling is private, and in a society addicted to oversharing, privacy is mistaken for emptiness. Over time, this misunderstanding creates isolation. The Sigma male learns that the depth of his emotions will never be validated unless he performs them in ways that feel unnatural to him. And so he chooses silence, even when it costs him connection. The irony is painful. He's written off as emotionless precisely because he feels too deeply to cheapen his emotions with performance. The unfairness lies in the fact that society rewards noise over authenticity. Those who exaggerate emotions are comforted, while those who carry them quietly are ignored. And so the Sigma male, who often feels more than he shows, ends up being miscast as a man with no heart at all. In truth, he has one of the deepest hearts in the room. It just doesn't beg for an audience. Number 7. They're invisible until they're a threat. They're invisible until they're a threat. And this is one of the most twisted ironies of being a Sigma male. In most settings, he blends into the background because he isn't loud, he isn't desperate for attention, and he isn't interested in the shallow rituals of social dominance. People overlook him, sometimes even dismiss him as irrelevant. He isn't counted among the movers and shakers because he doesn't parade himself as one. But the moment his quiet competence starts shifting the balance, suddenly the room sees him, and not in admiration, but in hostility. It's as if his invisibility works against him twice. At first, nobody acknowledges what he brings. Then, when it finally becomes undeniable, the same people who ignored him flip and see him as competition. The hierarchy depends on predictability. Alphas lead loudly, betas follow obediently, and everyone else plays their role. But the Sigma male doesn't announce his role, he just moves. And that movement unsettles people who rely on clear labels to feel secure. The unfairness is that he never asked to be in the fight. He doesn't want to dominate anyone or overthrow the social order, yet by existing outside it, he destabilizes it. His quiet independence exposes the fragility of other people's power, because it proves there's a way to win without playing their game. That's when the mood changes. He's no longer invisible, he's marked. This shift often comes with backlash. Colleagues start treating him as a rival, not a peer. Friends become suspicious of his motives. Leaders see him as a silent challenger to their authority. Suddenly, everything he does is scrutinized, and every step he takes is framed as a move in some competition he never signed up for. The paradox is brutal. When he stays quiet, he's ignored. When he shows his strength, he's targeted. There's almost no middle ground. He goes from invisible to enemy in one leap, and that leap happens not because he craves power, but because others fear losing it. For the Sigma male, this means life is harder not because of what he does, but because of what his very existence represents. A threat to systems built on control and conformity. Number 8, they're villainized in advance. They're villainized in advance because the world is deeply uncomfortable with what it cannot read. The Sigma male's quiet, watchful nature makes him unpredictable, and in human psychology, unpredictability is often equated with danger. In films, the silent character in the corner is rarely written as the hero. He's the suspect, the mastermind, or the one with a dark agenda. That narrative bleeds into real life, where workplaces, schools, and even social groups unconsciously assign the same role to the quiet outsider. His mystery becomes malice by default. It doesn't matter that he hasn't done anything wrong. His lack of obvious expression, his refusal to overshare, and his calm detachment all create a blank space. And people hate blank spaces. They fill them with suspicion, fear, and gossip. The Sigma doesn't talk much. He must be plotting. He doesn't play along with group dynamics. He must be arrogant. He observes more than he speaks. He must be judging everyone. That projection becomes his reputation before he's even had a chance to define himself. This villainizing often happens silently behind his back. Colleagues whisper that he's strange or intense. Friends of friends warn others that he gives off bad vibes. In truth, what unsettles them is not malice, it's neutrality. The Sigma doesn't broadcast intentions, which leaves others to invent them. And people rarely invent something flattering. The cost is heavy. Opportunities pass him by because decision-makers don't trust his energy. Relationships crumble before they start because people assume he's hiding some dark flaw. Even in casual groups, his mere presence can attract paranoia, as though being unreadable is the same thing as being dangerous. It's an unfair stigma that forces him to live under suspicion without trial. The tragedy is that the Sigma male is rarely the villain at all. If anything, he avoids conflict more than most. But his refusal to play the performance game of constant reassurance makes him the perfect canvas for other people's fears. And so, he carries a role he never auditioned for. The villain in everyone's imagination, proving that sometimes the scariest thing in the room isn't evil. It's just mystery. Number 9. Their independence blocks collaboration. Their independence blocks collaboration because in a world that runs on handshakes, small talk, and carefully maintained alliances, the Sigma male doesn't play along. He isn't hostile toward teamwork, he just refuses to treat approval-seeking as the price of entry. While others bond over flattery, office politics, or endless social rituals, he focuses on the work itself. To him, results matter more than appearances, but to everyone else, his lack of effort in playing the game looks like resistance. They assume he can't cooperate, when in reality, he just refuses to fake it. This misunderstanding has serious consequences. In workplaces, promotions often go not to the most competent, but to the most connected. The Sigma male may outperform his peers, yet because he isn't seen at after-work drinks or doesn't laugh at the boss's bad jokes, he gets quietly sidelined. His independence is mistaken for arrogance, his focus for aloofness, and his refusal to grovel for validation for being difficult. He doesn't even need to say no. The absence of yes is enough to brand him as uncooperative. Even outside of work, this pattern follows him. In social groups, people label him as detached or uninterested because he won't compromise himself just to belong. In creative or collaborative projects, he's often excluded, not because he lacks talent, but because he doesn't indulge in the ego-stroking rituals others rely on to feel secure. Ironically, he can work with anyone. He just doesn't advertise his willingness through empty gestures. The unfairness here is that independence is his strength. It allows him to carry weight without leaning on others, to think clearly without herd influence, and to bring original ideas to the table. But instead of being respected for that, he's punished with exclusion. Opportunities slip past him, not because he lacks ability, but because he won't sell himself cheaply to earn a seat at the table. In the end, the Sigma male isn't blocked from collaboration because he can't work with people. He's blocked because the system confuses authenticity with rebellion. And so, in a world that values networking over skill, his independence costs him doors that his competence alone should have opened wide. Number 10. Their privacy feels like an insult. Their privacy feels like an insult because in today's culture, oversharing has become the currency of connection. People expect access, not just to your public self, but to your private thoughts, struggles, and insecurities. They measure closeness by how much you disclose. When a Sigma male doesn't play by that rule, when he keeps parts of himself tucked away, others don't see it as a boundary. They see it as rejection. It doesn't matter that his guardedness isn't malicious. To him, privacy is about dignity, safety, and control. He doesn't feel the need to broadcast every thought to prove he cares. But to others, his silence stings. Friends may feel he doesn't trust them. Colleagues may interpret it as arrogance. Even in relationships, partners can take it personally, assuming his need for space means he's emotionally distant or withholding. The Sigma isn't closing doors out of spite. He's simply protecting what matters most to him. Yet the world translates that protection as superiority. This misinterpretation leads to friction everywhere. In groups, he's the mysterious one people whisper about. In workplaces, he's labeled hard to read, which often translates into being overlooked for leadership, simply because leaders are expected to be open books. In personal circles, he's accused of acting like he's too good to share like everyone else. The truth is, his silence has nothing to do with ego. It's simply his way of keeping something for himself in a world that demands constant access. The unfairness lies in the double standard. Those who overshare are praised for being authentic and relatable, even when their vulnerability is performative. Meanwhile, the Sigma's quiet authenticity is miscast as coldness or pride. He ends up judged not by what he does wrong, but by what he refuses to give away. What makes this so exhausting is that the Sigma doesn't even want special treatment. He isn't asking for people to admire his privacy. He just wants it respected. But instead, his silence is weaponized against him. His boundaries are treated like walls, his quiet like contempt, and his privacy like an insult. And so he carries yet another burden, being misunderstood not for what he shows, but for what he chooses to keep hidden. Number 11. They're too rare to be normalized. They're too rare to be normalized because society thrives on patterns. People like labels, categories, and neat little boxes that explain who fits where. Alphas are the loud leaders, betas are the loyal followers, and everyone else falls somewhere in between. Those archetypes are easy to understand, easy to predict, and easy to manage. But Sigma males don't fit into that chart. They move differently, think differently, and live outside of the categories people are trained to recognize. And when something can't be neatly categorized, the world doesn't admire it. It mistrusts it. This is why Sigma males are mislabeled endlessly. One moment they're branded as antisocial, the next as arrogant, then as rebels, then as introverts who just need fixing. Society keeps throwing words at them, hoping one will stick because not having a label makes people uncomfortable. Rare things aren't normalized, they're pathologized. The Sigma male doesn't just confuse the system, he exposes how fragile the system really is. Because if one man can thrive outside the blueprint, maybe the blueprint itself was never absolute. The unfair part is that this rarity denies them belonging. People don't quite know how to interact with someone they can't categorize. In workplaces, they're treated as wild cards, in friendships they're the odd one out, and in relationships, they're often accused of being different in ways that partners can't fully articulate. Instead of being valued for their uniqueness, they're treated like a puzzle piece that doesn't fit anywhere on the board. And unlike common archetypes, they don't have cultural templates to lean on. Alphas are glorified in stories, betas are at least understood, but Sigmas are often reduced to stereotypes or villain tropes. They become myths rather than men, concepts rather than people. That's the price of being rare. You're not normalized, you're exoticized or misjudged. The deeper truth is that rarity doesn't make them broken, it makes them free. But freedom in a conformist world comes at a cost. When you can't be explained in familiar terms, you'll always be mislabeled, misunderstood, and mistrusted. Sigma males live with that reality daily, carrying the burden of being too rare to ever be fully seen as normal. Number 12. They attract parasites instead of partners. They attract parasites instead of partners because their self-sufficiency acts like a magnet for people who lack it. A Sigma male doesn't lean on others, doesn't beg for validation, and doesn't crumble under pressure. That aura of strength draws people in, but not always the right kind. Instead of attracting equals who can stand on their own, he often finds himself surrounded by those who want to feed off his stability. To them, his independence looks like a lifeboat, and they cling to it without offering anything in return. This isn't always obvious at first. The parasite often disguises themselves as a loyal friend, a supportive partner, or a grateful teammate. But over time, patterns emerge. They never bring solutions, only problems. They expect the Sigma to carry the emotional load, fix the mess, or provide the resources, while giving little or nothing back. It's not partnership, it's dependency. And because Sigma males rarely complain or broadcast their struggles, parasites take even more, assuming he has infinite reserves. The harsh reality is that true partners, whether in love, work, or friendship, are rare for Sigma males precisely because their independence intimidates equals and attracts the needy. Strong, self-sufficient people may admire them, but they often keep their distance, knowing the Sigma doesn't seek attachment. Meanwhile, weaker people mistake his calm energy for a shelter, attaching themselves tightly to his life like vines to a tree. This creates a cycle of quiet exhaustion. The Sigma doesn't like cutting people off unnecessarily, but he quickly senses when someone's presence is a drain rather than a contribution. Every conversation becomes lopsided, every interaction weighted with neediness, and every relationship tilted toward one person giving and the other taking. Over time, this constant energy drain hardens him, making him even less willing to open up, because he's learned that openness often invites exploitation. The unfairness here is sharp. His strength should attract equals, but instead it attracts takers. And because he isn't loud about his boundaries, those takers often overstay their welcome, leaving him depleted. For the Sigma male, self-sufficiency doesn't just free him, it paints a target on his back for those who can't survive without someone else to lean on. Life is unfairly harder for Sigma males, not because they are weak, but because their very strengths are constantly twisted into burdens. Their silence gets mistaken for guilt, their independence for arrogance, their privacy for rejection, and their competence for an endless obligation. They don't chase approval, so they're misread as rebels. They don't overshare, so they're branded as cold. They thrive outside the herd, so they're cast as villains before they've even spoken a word. Every quality that should set them apart as rare and valuable ends up making them misunderstood, targeted, or quietly drained by others. And yet, this is what makes the Sigma male unbreakable. The hardships he faces aren't handed to him because he's fragile. They're handed to him precisely because he is resilient enough to carry them. While others crumble without applause, without belonging, or without constant validation, the Sigma male continues to build, survive, and thrive in silence. He's tested more, scapegoated more, and overlooked more, but he also rises more, endures more, and proves more. In a world built on labels, shortcuts, and stereotypes, the Sigma male exists as a reminder that not everyone can be categorized or controlled. His struggle is unfair, but it's also proof that he plays by a different rulebook, one where survival doesn't depend on fitting in, but on refusing to break under pressure. And that is why, no matter how misunderstood or miscast he becomes, the Sigma male remains what others secretly fear and quietly respect. The man who doesn't need the world to validate his worth. That is his burden, that is his power. And that is why, though life may be harder for him, it will never defeat him. If this breakdown of the Sigma male's unfair struggles struck a chord with you, don't just sit back. Join the conversation. Drop your thoughts in the comments and let me know which point resonated with you the most. Smash that like button if you felt the raw honesty in this, and share it with someone who needs to understand what Sigma males really go through. And of course, if you want more content that cuts through the clichés and dives into the truth with no sugarcoating, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.